don't you give me any of that super polite sir stuff, Schaefer. I told you yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. You're not going to come into my classroom looking like a freak show.
Why, hello. I'm Charles L. Schaefer. I'm Jerry's dad. You're Jerry's English teacher, aren't you? Well, I certainly have heard a lot about you, Mr. Dragan. I mean, even before this unfortunate little misunderstanding developed. I certainly have admired the compositions that Jerry has been doing in your class. I mean that I always said that I always knew Jerry had the talent, if only someone could bring it out.
Well, he has a certain amount of ability.
Why is Mr. Dragan always picking on Jerry Schaefer? He's such a nice, gentle boy.
He's not the only one who doesn't like the way Jerry dresses. Yesterday, he spent 3 hours in the detention room.
Oh, that's terrible. He's always fine in our class. Never any trouble. He always knows his lesson. Pete never has any problem with him.
I guess that's because Pete doesn't see him as a threat.
You look like a sensible person, Mr. Schaefer. How can you allow your son to come to school dressed like this?
You see, well, I go to the office before Jerry, so I don't actually see what he wears.
What about his hair? You can see his hair, can't you?
His hair? Oh, it has gotten a little long, hasn't it? You see, that's what we're here for today, Mr. Dragan. I've come to talk to Mr. Kaufman to see if we can't straighten this whole thing out.
Have you decided how you're going to handle this dress code business?
No, not yet. I'm hoping if I don't make a big issue out of it, nobody else will. That's why I'm very quietly having some of the parents in to see if we can't get them to cooperate with us.
Well, if you don't mind me saying so, I think that's wishful thinking.
Why?
Well, the kids, all of them, want a more liberal dress code. You've got to consider it. Or get yourself a bigger box.
Well, what do they want to wear some of this stuff for anyway?
Oh, lots of reasons. Sense of freedom, individuality, desire to be different. If you want my opinion, I'd say it wouldn't hurt to loosen up a little on the dress code. As long as it doesn't interfere with the learning process, why care what they wear?
Oh, I don't care, but the school board does, and the parents. Not to mention most of the teachers who don't share your sympathy with the student's sense of freedom. You may be looking at the principal of tomorrow.
Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes?
Mr. Schaefer is waiting out there to see you.
Well, send him in. Well, in a minute. I hope Mr. Schaefer is not one of those parents that blames us for the way he raised his kid. Now then, watch a principal go to work. Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Kaufman, I'm so pleased to meet you. I've heard so much about you.
Come in, sir. This is Pete Dixon. Mr. Dixon's Jerry's first period teacher.
How do you do?
And I've heard a lot about you, too, Mr. Dixon. Jerry seems to like you.
Now, won't you sit down?
Yes.
All right, now, let me get right to the point. Frankly, Mr. Schaefer, Jerry's clothing is creating problems. For him, for me, and for the teachers.
Teachers?
Well, most of the teachers, anyhow. You've got to admit that the way he dresses is a little bizarre.
Bizarre. Well, I think that Jerry is just going through a little phase is all.
There is a prevailing dress code in this school. We've got to abide by it.
Abide by it? I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, of course, I do try to give the kids a little leeway.
A little leeway? That's a good idea.
If it was up to Mr. Dixon here, I'd be giving them a lot more leeway.
If it was up to me, we would do away with the dress code entirely.
Do away with it entirely. Now, you just might be onto something there.
However, as of now, the dress code does stand.
It stands? Well, of course it stands. I mean, it has to, doesn't it? Right?
Mr. Schaefer? What I'm saying is, I would appreciate any cooperation I can get from you in trying to resolve the problem.
Well, you have certainly got it, Mr. Kaufman. You just simply tell Jerry what to wear, and you have my guarantee that I will back you up 100%.
Well, I was kind of hoping that you'd tell him what to wear.
Oh, well, if you think it would do any good, I mean, if
Yeah,
you...
good. Why don't we do something about it right away, right now, in fact? Let's see if we can't get Jerry through a whole day of class.
Let's.
Good. Bonnie,
Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
send a message up. Get Jerry Schaefer down here, please.
Oh, he's in the detention room already.
I'll talk to him in there, if it's all right with you.
Be my guest. First door on the left.
First
On the left.
door on the left.
Well, as far as I can see, he's strongly in favor
Strongly in favor of what?
of what anybody says.
What specifically did Kaufman say about my clothes?
Well, now, you see, he's got a little problem there, son. He would like to give you a little leeway, but he's got to back up his teachers, too.
That's exactly what I thought.
Oh, now, wait a minute. You don't understand at all. You see, I persuaded him to think about relaxing this dress code rule a little bit. Really, he's going to look into it. But until then, I was thinking that it might help if you cooled it a little bit.
Nobody's got the right to tell me how to dress.
Well, of course not. Listen, son, I'm an individual, too. Nobody ever told me how to dress either. Oh, yes, I see. You think because I'm dressed this way that I've sold out. Well, let me tell you something, son. I happen to want to dress this way, and always have. Even, I might add, when this style of clothing was considered to be quite different. And look at the way they dress now, huh? All of these mod styles and Nehru jackets. You don't see me being pressured into dressing that way, do you?
Terrific. Who got you, Jason?
Mr. Carl in P.E. He said he ain't gonna have nobody in his class playing basketball with earrings on. He said it looks effeminate.
Come here. Jason, this is my father, who's just been in with Kaufman.
Do you think it's effeminate?
No, of course not. I mean, it's a sign of your individuality, isn't it?
Right.
What I was just saying to Jerry here, Jason, is that I am fully in sympathy with you boys' need to assert your individuality. But,
Hey, down with the dress code!
Hey, Nick, did good old Miss Dunphy get you too?
Who else, man? Man, she hates beards, I'll tell you. Why does she hate beards so much?
Because all she can grow is a mustache.
Oh, man.
Hi there, Mick. I'm Jerry's dad. Mick, I've just been discussing this whole dress code thing with Jerry and Jason here, trying to figure out a way that we can work this whole thing out.
Kids want action, Mr. Kaufman.
Of course they do. And the parents want action, and the teachers want action. Everybody wants action. The only trouble is everybody wants a different kind of action.
Illustrated by the fact there are 2 petitions going around right now. One by the students demanding a removal of the dress code, and another one by some of the faculty demanding that you enforce it.
Do me a favor, will you? If you happen to run across that faculty petition, destroy it.
Oh, don't let them bother you. Those are the same teachers that think coeducational schools are decadent.
No, it's not only them. This whole dress code thing makes a lot of teachers very nervous.
But why? I mean, if we can't change with the times, who can?
It's a little naive, my dear. In every other field of endeavor, change is synonymous with success. In education, it's synonymous with war. That's a 3-letter word spelled P-T-A. Any principal would have to be out of his mind to even consider suggesting a change like this.
Does that mean you're not going to?
No, it means I'm out of my mind.
You mean you're seriously thinking of changing the dress code?
It means I'm going to bring it up very, very gently at tonight's PTA meeting and hope I don't get lynched. I'm counting on you to be there to defend the liberalization of the dress code, which should be about as easy as defending free love at a DAR convention.
Well, just so I know where I stand, what is the current dress code?
Funny you should ask that. I just happen to have a copy of it right here. I had Bonnie dig it up for me. It can use a little modification here and there.
Girls' skirts will be worn no less than 6 inches below the knees.
On Friday, pep days, boys must wear clean white shirts with blue and gold knit ties. And 9th grade boys will wear blue and gold beanies. Well, that's it. The current Whitman dress code, as written in 1940. Now, what we'd like to propose is some changes to keep up with the times.
Oh, hold on there just a minute.
Yes, Mr. Wagner?
Well, if that's the dress code we got now, and these kids are dressing the way they are, what will they dress like if you change it?
You've got a point there. Now, look, I've got to have a dress code that I can administer, not something as outdated as that.
He's right. We've got to give these kids something that they can live with.
You've got to draw the line somewhere.
Too many people are afraid to stand up to these kids nowadays.
That's the truth. This man has got something to say that I think you all ought to hear. Now listen to this. No, you go ahead. You tell him just what you told me.
Well, I don't know how anybody else feels about this, you see. I mean, maybe it's my own opinion. But I was just saying that there are too many of these people who are afraid to stand up to these kids nowadays. But
All right. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to appoint a committee of parents and teachers to study this issue and make recommendations to me. Begin with, I'm appointing Mr. Dixon, chairman of the committee.
We already know where he stands.
We already know where you stand, too, so I'll put you on the committee to balance it out. How's that?
I want him there, too. What we need is the kind of guy who's not afraid to have an opinion.
Okay. Each war seems to influence a whole generation of writers and artists. And the Civil War was no exception. Can anybody name one? Oh, come on. There's somebody we here at Walt Whitman should all know.
Oh, yeah. Walt Whitman.
Okay, let's talk about Walt Whitman. Jerry.
I can tell you one thing. He wouldn't last very long around here.
Why do you say that?
Well, he'd never pass the dress code. Look. Guy's hair comes down to his shoulders.
He'd be in good company, wouldn't he? Most famous men in history wouldn't pass the dress code. But dress standards change, don't they?
Not at Walt Whitman, they don't.
Okay, you're always asking me how history affects your lives, right? Well, history is on your side.
I don't get you, Mr. Dixon.
Well, the last 40 or 50 years has been the only prolonged period in history where short hair and the clean-shaven look has been popular. And even now, its popularity is sagging a little bit. Now, I want to tell you
Hey, Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
I heard you're chairman of that PTA dress code committee.
That's right.
Yeah, well, some of us had a meeting, and the general feeling was that we don't really stand a chance against a stacked jury like that. 3 parents, 3 teachers, you know what I mean?
Well, I know what you mean. Suppose the committee was made up of 3 parents, 3 teachers, and 3 students.
Can you do that?
I can try. I have to talk to Mr. Kaufman first.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, Jerry.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that we'll win.
Yeah, right, but we're closing the gap.
4 minutes and 55 seconds, right on the nose. Tomorrow we'll work it up to 2 laps. There's something I want to talk to you about. It seems as good a time as any. That's why it's as good a time as any. I want to have 3 of the students on the dress code committee when we meet tonight. Oh. Don't say it. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you're having enough trouble from some of the parents without that, right? These parents are going to cause you trouble about something anyway, right? So it might as well be this, right? Well, what harm is it going to do to let the students have a voice in this? Oh, I know. Supposedly they aren't mature enough to be able to make major decisions like this. Do you know that within the next few years that most of these students are going to have to make decisions about things much more difficult than what to wear? It wouldn't hurt to start letting them make a few now. What do you say? Can I have those students on my committee?
Oh, I thought you were going to answer that question for me like you did with all the others. Oh. Let's see. What do I say?
Well, if you ask me, the whole issue boils down to one thing. Contempt for authority. And I'm still going to protest your letting them be represented on this committee, Dixon.
Well, they're not exactly the Viet Cong, Mr. Wagner. I don't think that it would do any harm to listen to the rest of what they have to say.
You know, I think the whole trouble with the educational system nowadays comes from the students wanting too much to say. You show me a school that's a democracy, and I'll show you a shambles. And that's what these long hairs want.
Right. When I was in the Army, they cut off all our hair, and I'll tell you, it did us a world of good. We knew something about authority in those days.
Well, what does that have to do with the dress code?
Oh, plenty. It's all tied in.
I think we ought to give some of the power back to the teachers. I mean, if things keep going the way they're going, next thing we know, the students will be wanting to elect the teachers.
And we all know who they'd elect first, don't we?
Let's stay on the subject, please.
We haven't heard from you, Schaefer.
Oh, well, that's because I've been trying to keep an open mind and listen to both sides of this.
Come on, Dad. You must have an opinion by now.
Dad? You mean he's your son? Thought you were the one that said we had to stand up to these punks.
Okay, let's stay on the subject. We're talking about the dress code. Mick.
Well, the reason why I like to see the dress code changed is because I don't think it's important how a person looks.
That's pretty obvious.
What he means is that appearance doesn't mean a thing if it's only covering up something phony.
Are you trying to say that only phonies are dressed in business suits?
No, they're phonies in long hair and beards, too. It's just that there are more hypocrites wearing neckties than beads, that's all.
Frankly, I don't mind telling you that those beads and long hair and funny clothes frighten me a little bit.
They shouldn't. Not unless freedom frightens you.
Oh, come on now. I've had it up to here with all that freedom stuff.
You know, I'm sick and tired of hearing what a lousy job we've been doing.
You know, I just love to know what you're going to do to make this a better world.
I think we can start by not trying to shut people up.
I'll bet you'd love to shut me up, though, huh?
No. I may not agree with your tactics, Mr. Wagner, but I've got to admire your honesty.
That's true. At least we know where you're at.
Well, I think we've said all that's going to be said. What do you say we take a vote?
I still don't think they should vote, and I'm going to file a protest. Unless our side wins, of course.
All right. All those in favor of keeping the dress code as it stands, please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 8. Somebody didn't vote.
Jerry, I had a perfectly good reason for not casting my vote. Look, an abstaining vote is a vote. It only means that you haven't made up your mind yet. I simply wanted some time to think over what I had heard so that I could render my decision properly.
Nobody else needed time to think it over.
Well, I can't help it if I'm careful, can I?
Look, I wouldn't even mind if you had voted against us, but not to vote at all. Is it asking too much for you to have an opinion?
You're being a little hard on me, aren't you? I mean, just because I don't like to offend people by forcing opinions on them.
Not expressing your opinion with everything that's going on today is the biggest offense of all. Look, I'll see you at home.
Well, I think that summarizes all of the points covered by the Dress Code Committee in our meeting yesterday. The results of the vote were 4 in favor of retaining the present dress code, 4 opposed, and 1 abstention.
Tie vote. I might have known I wasn't going to get any help on this thing.
It's your own fault. If you hadn't let him point those 3 kids to that committee, the vote would have been 5-1 in favor of the dress code. Or 4-1, and 1 abstention.
Well, I'll stand by my decision on that one.
Just as I'll stand by any decision I make regarding the dress code.
I think you better poll all of us here tonight to find out where we stand.
Yeah, let's have a vote. All right. We can have a vote. All right, you've seen Mr. Dixon outline both sides of... Yes.
Mr. Kaufman, may I say something?
Go ahead, Mr. Schaefer.
Before you vote, there's something that I've got to say. You see, I was the abstaining vote yesterday at that meeting. I abstained because because my whole life has been one big abstention. And I'm not particularly proud of it right now. Yesterday, my son, Jerry, he's one of those boys with the long hair and the funny clothes, by the way. He said something that I've been thinking about. He said one of the reasons that they wear these clothes is that they don't want to be like us. They want to be something different. And they hope better. I guess it's only natural, you see, for a father to want his son to be like him. I know that's what I wanted Jerry to be. But now I want him to be him. So this time when we vote, I'm not going to abstain this time. And I'm going to vote for Jerry.
All right. Let's take a vote. All those in favor of retaining the present dress code.
Good morning, Mr. Kaufman. Well, I see that even with the new dress code, you two have been able to restrain yourselves.
Don't tell anybody, but I'm wearing psychedelic underwear.
You know something? For an advocate of free dress, you certainly dress square.
Well, you're not exactly a human rainbow, Mr. Kaufman.
Oh, that's what you think. In the right light, this is a see-through tweed.
Well, I'm glad to see the new dress code's working out so well.
Oh, of course. I knew they'd all go wild for a couple of weeks and then it would all settle down into something we can all live with. You don't see anyone taking advantage of it.
Well, hardly anyone.